Dar Chapter 22, The Challenge. Dar was the first to get up the next morning. An early ray of sunlight struck a large rock and, to Dar's surprise, revealed a healing plant half hidden behind it. This lucky find would please his grandmother. Dar started to pull off its leaves and purple flowers, but stopped. He turned to Keenock, who was slowly getting up. "I'm going to take home the whole plant, roots and all. Grandmother can put it back in the ground near the river." He began to dig up the plant and grinned. "Perhaps, like Seelan, it will become a useful and respected member of its new clan." Keenock laughed. "I would welcome it if it decides to live among us." His face grew serious. "Dar, I never thanked you for going up that rocky ledge to get the healing plants after I was gored. You helped save my life." "The spirits wanted you to live, Uncle, but I see you're still in pain." "My shoulder has healed, but my leg still hurts. It will mend soon. Now, Dar, give me a demonstration of what your spear thrower can do." "We'll do it together," Dar said, and pointed to a tree far from where they stood. "See if you can reach that tree trunk with your spear." Keenock shook his head. "I'm not sure I can, Dar." He readied his spear and threw with all his strength. The spear fell short. Keenock's tone was challenging. "Your turn." Dar took out his spear thrower and got into throwing position. He was less tense than he expected to be. He attached his spear to the spear thrower and hurled the spear in one quick, flowing motion. It flew toward the target, fast and sure, and struck the trunk and stayed there, quivering. Dar stood proudly and waited for Keenock to speak. Keenock stared at the tree in amazement, then took the spear thrower from Dar and turned it in his hands. "All right, Dar, I see that it works." Keenock was silent for a moment. "If I'd had a spear thrower when I was going after that bison, maybe I wouldn't have needed to get so close to make my throw." Keenock broke off again, then finally said, "Will you make me one?" "Gladly, Uncle, but it will have to be a simple one made of wood. When I become more skillful, I'll make you one of antler. Then you can choose the animal you want me to carve on it. Your spear thrower won't be as beautiful as one carved by Seelan, but it will be as fine as I can make it." Keenock smiled his thanks and began to collect his belongings. Dar left him to retrieve the spears. A quick movement in the distance made Dar look up to the craggy foothills beyond the pine forest. Perched on an overhang, beyond the reach of spear and spear thrower, a large cat stretched its long legs and powerful body in the morning sunlight. Dar squinted into the sun, and his heart seemed to stop. The cat's teeth jutted down over its lower jaw like daggers. Dar ran back to Keenock and silently started to lead him to a spot where he could also see the cat. Keenock resisted Dar's pull on his arm. "Where are you taking me? Why are you so excited?" Dar pointed to the overhang. Keenock looked up and grew very still. "The spirit creature has come again," he murmured. "No," Dar said. "A dagger-toothed cat is sunning itself on a ledge." But Keenock gave no sign he heard Dar. "Uncle, put down the burden of the spirit test. My father's death was not your fault. You tried to protect him from an animal just like the one we see. If there had been a spirit test, why would you have been saved?" Dar spoke slowly in a low voice. "I'm glad you lived." The cat seemed to hear them and turned its head sharply in their direction. It snarled, jumped to a higher ledge, and then was gone. Keenock stood staring at the empty ledge and was quiet for a long time. "Perhaps you're right, nephew," he finally said, and turned to face Dar. "Someday, when you're able to make me a rod of antler, will you carve a dagger-toothed cat on it?" "Of course," Dar answered, "and no one else will have such a spear thrower." When they returned to their overnight campsite, Dar was surprised to see the amount of gear his uncle had brought to the pine forest. Keenock's 3 pouches bulged, and he had an extra spear. Dar had noticed none of this in last night's darkness. "Why did you bring so much with you just to empty the traps? You look like you have enough supplies for a long journey." "I was setting out on a long journey. I was coming to look for you. I had planned to go as far as the lake Mora talks about." Dar's eyes opened wide. "But you're still recovering from your accident." "Dar, Your grandmother is sick with worry over you. Everyone is worried. Keenock paused. I was worried. Dar put his hand on Keenock's shoulder. Thank you, Uncle, for starting on such a trip. I'm glad we discovered each other here in the pine forest. Dar started to gather up his belongings. Keenock put out the last embers of the fire and picked up his gear. He walked away with an uneven gait, leaning on one of his spears for support. Dar easily caught up with him, and the two men walked out of the pine forest, headed for home.